goodness. Joining me now to discuss this is TalkTV's presenter Sarah Hewson, who spoke exclusively to the mothers today as they arrived in Britain. I mean, you don't know what to say, really, Sarah, to that. It's just awful, isn't it? Just
no, I've
horrendous.
been struggling all day to try and find the words to describe that raw pain that we saw there from Renana Jacob. It is a month now since their children were taken by Hamas in their pyjamas, bare feet, and so harrowing to hear Renana there describing being on the end of the telephone and listening to her 12-year-old beg for his life and beg to be saved. Also with her, Batsheva, who was in her home with her husband and her 3 children, the youngest 18 months old, a 10-year-old girl and a 12-year-old boy, barricaded themselves into the safe room. Her husband on the outside to try and protect them. He was shot. They were eventually dragged out by Hamas terrorists, and she and her 2 daughters on a motorbike with one Hamas terrorist, her 12-year-old son sent off on another. She managed to escape from that motorbike with her 2 daughters, but her last sighting of her son was as he disappeared off towards Gaza City on the back of a Hamas motorbike.
And she only managed to escape because there was some Israeli military by that stage trying to intervene.
There was a bike accident, they fell. She managed to run away and escape.
It's just unbelievable, isn't it? You can't imagine anything like that happening. You know, even when most of us talk about our children and, you know, or our parents or anything, and you can't imagine having a safe room even in your house that you go and hide in on a regular basis in case there's a rocket attack.
And Renana, away from home that night, she'd gone to a neighbouring kibbutz to visit a friend, her 2 boys, 12 and 16, at home. But they knew as well, those young boys knew what to do when they heard the gunshots. They went straight into the safe room and barricaded themselves inside. I mean, it is beyond any comprehension.
It's just living in those circumstances. I think people don't talk about it enough. They don't understand that that's what these people are living through. You know, when I talk to people in Tel Aviv, when they say, look, we might have to cut the interview short because there might be a rocket attack any second, because it happens all the time, and they have had it happening all the time for years, you know, it's just awful and incredible. And I mean, I watched some of these interviews that you've done because you've been here all day today. And I admire your stamina and your strength and just being able to emotionally cope with it, because this is something that any parent just can't imagine.
No, I have a son the same age as the boys we're talking about here, and it's just incomprehensible, really, isn't it, to anyone watching this. And the courage of these 3 mothers to speak out. I think they feel as if it's not happening to them, as if they're watching a movie. And you hear their stories of what they went through that night and what they are living through every single night now. Batsheva, when I spoke to her, described leaving her husband behind. He'd been shot, and she doesn't know whether he's still alive or what has happened to him. And well, I think we can have a listen to what happened when she finally reached safety. And she wanted to try and find out what had happened to Ohad, her husband.
On the first motorcycle, they put Eitan, my son, and the baby on terrorist hands. Me and Yael, my daughter, she's 10 years old. She's sitting here. We sat on the second motorcycle. Luckily, the baby was crying, so they gave me the baby. So I was with my 2 daughters on the second motorcycle. Eitan was alone on the first motorcycle. Then we start driving to Gaza through the kibbutz. The kibbutz was burning. It was horror. Very near to Gaza border, 2 tanks of the army started to drive at the fields, and the terrorists were running. There was a big chaos. Our motorcycle were falling. This was the last moment I saw Eitan, my son. His motorcycle continued to Gaza.
Just awful, as you said, Sarah. And they came to London, the mothers, to kind of publicise the plight of what the families are going through, because there are many families like them who we haven't heard from.
Yeah, they came to London for one day to try and raise awareness internationally about the plight of the hostages. I think their fear is that the hostages' story and their fate is disappearing down the news agenda, and the focus is elsewhere because there are horrific suffering on both sides of this conflict. 4,000 children, Palestinian children dead in Gaza. But to remind the international community that there are 32 children taken hostage by Hamas, 32 families not knowing what has happened to those children.